Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. Today we'll be discussing about AWS IAM. Now, what is AWS IAM? IAM stands for Identity and Access Management. So it is kind of self-explaining that what it is. It is handling the or managing identities in AWS account and the access of those. Okay, so we are mainly managing AWS account. Okay, but what do we actually mean by managing the identities and also the access? Well, first of all, what does managing identity mean? It basically means answering this question: who are you? Who are you? Okay, who are you who is logging in to my AWS? What is your identity? Are you validated? Are you the right person? It is like we see in logging into different websites and platforms, and they ask us that are you human? They're checking, right? And also we can consider it with the passwords and the mail that we have to input in order to log in. So this is identity. Who are you? And what do you mean by access? This is basically asking the question, what permission, what permissions you have. Okay, let's say you have access to my AWS system. Now, what permissions do you have in this cloud? What can you do? This is access management. Okay, and these are the two fundamental aim of AWS IAM. First of all, identity management, or we can call it authentication. Sorry, authentication. Okay, and managing the permissions or managing the access is something called authorization. Authorization. Okay, so basically IAM in AWS is a tool to authenticate and authorize different users. Let me go and in a bit details. Let's say this is our AWS account. Okay, and here we have certain services. Let's say compute. Let's say we have storage services. Let's say we have DB, database services. Okay, let's say we have these three services. Now, what does authentication mean? You are a random person. You want to go inside or log into the AWS system or cloud. Before you can do that, what do you have to do? You have to type in your mail, you have to type in your password, right? And if there's any other captcha or anything, only after that you can go inside the AWS account, right? Okay, so this validation process, this validation process is called authentication. Clear? Okay, fine. Now let's say I am a user and I have successfully validated myself that yes, I am a human. Yes, I'm not a hacker. Yes, I have the necessary credentials to log in to this specific AWS environment. Okay, fine. Now I'm inside the AWS account. Okay, but being inside the account, does it mean that I can do anything I want? Maybe, maybe not. Right. This is called authorization. Okay, if I have permission to access all of these three services: compute, storage, database. This is one kind of permission. I have access to everything. But if an admin, let's say, an admin has some restrictions, let's call it restriction. Restriction is that an outsider who just logged in can only access the database. Only database. When we have this kind of restriction, our user who is just authenticated to get into this environment cannot touch, edit, create, delete anything in compute or storage system or storage services. Only he can access the database. Not only that, if he doesn't have the full database access, he won't be able to fully do anything in database. Let's say he only has read access. He only has read access. Okay, then he would only be able to read those documentation, file, and everything in the database. Okay, he won't be able to create tables. He won't be able to edit anything. Clear? So the main thing here is restriction. Restriction. Basically, we are giving permissions to certain thing and restricting to certain thing. This is called authorization. I think we are clear on these two specific terms. First one, authentication, that is validating you are a valid person. And secondly, authorization, that means what permissions do you have, what can you do in the system. Okay, fine. So up until now, what we have discussed is that AWS IAM is basically identity and access management, which basically does authentication and authorization. Fine. Now the next thing is why. Why do we need that? Okay, let's go to the why part. Before that, there's a pointer. We have to keep in mind that, let's say, the person, let's say this is another person, the person that this account, this main AWS account belongs to, who is the creator, the email address you used is called the root user. Is called the root user. You are the supreme commander here. You have control over everything that is happening in this system. Everything. Okay? You can do anything you want. But only that account is the root user. Clear? Not any other. Not any other identity, not any other email accounts. Clear? Okay. So the point that I was trying to say is that in AWS, you have the root user, that is your account with which you have created the AWS system or cloud. And what IAM does is that through IAM, you create separate users. It might be user number 1, user number 2, user number 3, and dot dot dot. Okay? Through the root user, using IAM, you create multiple users as much as you want, and you give them name, you give them some password and other security stuffs. Okay, for all the users. Okay, after that, anyone with the name and the password and the security credentials can log into the AWS account of the root user. Again, AWS root user, the account with which you have created the AWS account. By using IAM, you can make or create multiple sub users, let's say. Okay, you are going to allocate name and password for each, and also some permissions. If you don't declare any permission, then they won't be able to do anything. They are only allowed to do what you have told them to do, what you have given permission to do. Okay, like I have previously mentioned that this guy over here, only has database access. So he can only do task in database. Okay, but the actual system or the actual account is of our root user that our user 1, user 2 is using based on their permissions. This is the fundamental idea of using IAM of AWS. Okay, now what was I saying? I was going to the why part. Why do we need AWS IAM? Why? Okay, first of all, security. How? Again, let's consider this is our AWS account, and let's say this is our root user. He is the supreme leader. He has all the authority. He is on the top. Okay, he has access to everything in the AWS account. Now just imagine that our root user, this account got hacked. Then what will happen? Your whole system is in trouble, right? It's a red alert. If someone hacks the main account, he can do whatever he likes. He can just nullify your billing, you know, make many resources. He can delete, edit, and create trouble for you. So this is a big issue. This is why the most important and common practice is to use or create IAM users for each and every single task. Okay, different task based on your need. Okay, now let's say this is our user 1 with which we only have access to EC2 instances. Okay, now whatever I want to do with EC2, I will just log in to this specific user 1 and do my EC2 stuff in the cloud. I'm not using my root account, so there's no trouble also. Okay, so we are basically having an extra bit of security layer type. Okay, we are directly not using the main account. This itself is reducing the chance of losing the account or being hacked into the actual account. This is the first one. Security. Another security point is that there are security measures inside AWS, something called MFA, that is multi-factor authentication. Okay, some codes will be sent to your email or authenticator app like Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, and there you have some numbers randomly generated which you will have to input in order to log in. So we have multiple layers. Fine. So this was the first point about the security, that it is not a good practice to use root user. This is why we need extra IAM users for according to our need. Now the second point is that shared model. Now what does shared model mean? Now just imagine that you have some compute resources, you have, let's say, storage resources, let's say you have some networking resources also, and you have a big team. Okay, now is it let's say, is it a good thing that everyone will have access to everything? Everyone will have access to all the three components here: compute, storage, and networking, right? Is it a good thing? No. One might, unwillingly or willingly change something, which might hamper other users' activity or their project, right? And it is really hassleful, it is really troublesome. So much maintenance. Just imagine you have, let's say, 500 EC2 instances, right? And storage and networking is huge. So it is a better thing to distribute the traffic or the resources. Let's say user 1 is allocated to compute. User 2 would do the storage part, and user 3 would do the networking part. We can share. The main thing is that we can share our resource. The main resource is of the root account. Okay, but we are sharing and distributing the resources in order to make our whole scenario, whole project, whole workload easy. And another thing comes with ease is that monitoring. We will be able to know which user have which permissions. So I can also add here, that is monitoring. This is an extra advantage of using IAM. We will be know who are using what permissions do they have, etc. Clear? Okay. These are the main two benefits of using AWS IAM. So to summarize, guys, let's say to summarize, AWS IAM is basically you have a root account, and through IAM you will be creating users, multiple users, okay, users, multiple users based on your need, based on your need, and all the users would have certain permissions, and access. And why we need this? We need this for security. We need this for better ease of our project workload. We need this for better monitoring. There are other advantages, but these are the main reason why we use our AWS IAM. Okay, so that was AWS what and why. Let's discuss about AWS IAM types. We have basically three types of IAM in AWS. First of all, user. Secondly, group. And the third is role. Now, regarding all of the three types, one important term is policy. What is policy? Well, policy is the permissions that you give for each account. Okay, let's go to the first type, that is user. User is the most basic type of IAM account or user. It basically means you are creating a IAM user. As simple as that. You just created an IAM user. A single, let's say we can describe a single user. Okay. Secondly is group. What is group? Let's get into a bit details. Let's say we have an AWS system where we have, let's say, compute, we have storages, we have, let's say, networking resources. Okay, now think, we have thousands of resources. Okay, thousands of resources, and assessing this huge number of resources and workload, we will be needing huge number of users, right? Let's say to handle this 1,000 um, resource, we will need 500 users. Okay, and we have three departments as well. Let's say we have the, let's say, the backend team, which are related to the storage. We have DevOps team, DevOps team, which are dealing with networking, and let's say some developers who are related to the compute part. Now, is it a feasible or viable or a good thing that you distribute these 500 users among these three categories every single time? You create 500 users, you create multiple policies for each of them, so that they can each individually have uh, the required permissions, required policy. You know the policy I have mentioned? Policy means permissions to use a resource, what resource and how they will be used. Okay, so it's a huge thing. Just imagine you are creating 500 users and assigning them the required policy. It's a huge task itself. Moreover, secondly, is that you have to make sure everything is perfect. Okay, if one backend uh, team member gets one permission and the other doesn't get the same thing, it is a huge misalignment and it can cause a lot of trouble in your entire system, right? This is where group comes in. In groups, what we do is that, let's go a bit down, we just divide, or we just assign all the policies to a group, all the required policies. We have assigned all the required policies to a certain place called dev. Now, whenever we have a dev team member, a new member, let's say, we will just assign him to our dev block, let's say dev block or dev group, and only assigning him to the dev group, he will have all the necessary policies, all the necessary permissions of a dev team member. So it is removing the human error of uh, giving the same exact policies to every member, and it is also making sure that our um, task is not repetitive. We don't have to manually do 500 IAM user. This is where the group comes in, and this is the main advantage of it. It is so easy. Now we can also distribute the thing in DevOps and also to our backend teams. We just have to make a group of DevOps, a group of backend, give all the required permissions in the group, and whenever we have a new member or need to assign someone to a certain group, we just say, this is your path. Just go there and you will have everything you need. Okay, so this is AWS group. The third thing is AWS role. AWS role in IAM. Role is basically a temporary user. We can call role as a temporary user. Okay, now why we need temporary user? We might need actually temporary user. Let's say we have private cloud in our private system, and we have a public cloud system as well. Okay, now for some reason we need to access the EC2s in our public service from the private part. Okay, for a specific need, we don't need it permanently. Okay, this not needing a permanent account, it is, a moment's requirement. In this kind of situation, we use AWS IAM roles. Role itself is temporary and its credentials change. Credentials change. Let's say 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or even hour. Okay, it's a small window through which you can access a cloud resource. This is why it is a temporary user. It is a user which has temporary access to the cloud. In simple terms, it is AWS roles. So we have, in really short and really briefly, covered AWS IAM types, that is user, a single user, groups, assigning or allocating all the policies in groups, and role, basically a temporary IAM user. So let's create an IAM user using AWS Console. So what is AWS Console? AWS Console is basically the interface after you log in with your AWS account. Okay, as you can see, I have logged in into my AWS account, and this is the view, the dashboard, you can say. So how can we create an IAM user through this console? Okay, again, console is basically what you see here. Okay, the interface, or the you can say the application, the website where you handle your AWS account is basically the AWS console, the UI. Okay, let's create our IAM. First, let's search IAM and you'll see the pop-up. Let's go to IAM. Okay, let's let it load. Yeah, here on the left part you can see there are certain options. There are user groups, there are users, there's roles, there's policies. I have previously discussed that we can create IAM of three types. It can be user, it can be roles, it can be groups. And in all of those, we assign policies. In the left part, as you can see here, we have all of the options to do. So let's create an user. Click on users and you see that I already have an user. Okay, let's create a new one. Press the create user. Let's give it a valid name. Let's say user 1. Okay, be sure of this condition. After that, tick the provide user access to the management console. There is an option of specify a user in identity center. This is a different thing. You have a different facility called identity center where you can manage IAM accounts or users. We are not going there for the basic part. Okay, so we will be choosing IAM with this option. Okay, let's scroll down. You see auto generated password and custom password. Custom password, you can set it up, and after that, whenever someone accesses your IAM user that you will create, he has to type in that specific password. So we are not going to go in that. Let's create an auto generated password. Here you can tick or untick this. Users must create a new password at next sign-in. It is recommended that whenever someone accesses this IAM user account for the first time, he will have to change the password. Okay, so let's not assign this for now. If you wish, you can assign this. Okay, let's go. Now you see three options. Add user to a group that I have previously discussed. You can create a group and you can assign users to that group, and he will have all the permissions that are given in the group. For our purpose today, we will be choosing this. Attach policies directly, meaning attach permissions directly into the IAM user. What permissions are you going to give him? If you scroll down, you see there are lots of permissions. There are lots of permissions already created, or policies, already created policies. Okay, and if you wish, you can even create policy by clicking this button, create policy, but that's advanced case, we are not going today. And these policies are basically JSON files. If you press a plus button here, you will see it is basically a JSON file which has all the stuffs written for these permissions. You can manually do a JSON file in order to make a policy, and you can create it. Okay, so as you can see, there are already created permissions or policies. So what can we do? Let us assign a policy. Let us assign a policy. What policy can we assign? uh, let's say IAM, let's say IAM full access. Wait, okay, if you click on the policy itself, it will redirect you into the details. Okay, so we are not into the details. Let's just click on IAM full access. Okay, we are giving full access to this IAM user. You can click as many as you like. Okay, but we interested in one. Okay, so let's go to next. Now you can review what have you done up until now. If you are uninterested, let's say I want to untick this. Let's say I don't want this policy. So let's minus it. Sorry, where is the minus button? Okay, let's attach something new. Let's say we will be needing to change the password when we first log into this IAM user. Next. Okay, we will be seeing all the permissions again. Next, and here you can see we have two permissions. See here, let me zoom in a bit. IAM full access and IAM user change password. This was uh, the policy that we just gave. Okay, from here I guess we can change it. Let's see if we can. Okay, let's stick to this, no need to change. Okay, so selecting the policy, we just have only one button left. Let's see, create user. It is creating, and it is created. So it is so simple. It is so simple. If I just write it down, basically you log into your AWS account, go to IAM, then go to user, then create user. You just fill in the blanks, the required stuffs, informations. Next, you give the policy. It's a major thing. Give policy, and after everything you will have a new AWS account created through AWS Console. So let's see whether we have actually created our AWS account. Okay, let's go to return to users list. Continue without viewing or downloading console password. Okay, so every user has something called uh, console password. Okay, this is the first password you will be needing when you change the actual password. So let's download it for now. Okay, if you download it, you can view it here. Let's open it. Yeah, it's a CSV file where the username is mentioned, the password you will use for the first time. Remember, we have applied a policy that we will have to change it. For the first time you will use this password. After that you have to change it, and you can access to that console, okay, through this specific URL. Let's click on it to see it. Okay, here you go, and our console is loading. Okay, let it load. Okay, you have been signed out. Oh, okay, for since I have a new uh, tab opened, so I have automatically signed out from the previous one. Okay, let's see. Let me show you then. I will eventually delete it, so no need to worry about it. Let's use this. This is the username. Okay, what's the password? Copy and paste here and sign in. Let's see what happens. You are here, and since we have already since we have already have a used a policy called create new password, we have to input a new password here. Clear? And then if you confirm it, we will log in to our account. Let's say, so new password, let us give in random password, and uh, after confirming, it will take a bit time and we will be okay. You may not be authorized. Okay, I think there's a bit of issue here, but nonetheless, this is how you can create your AWS account. Okay, it is, I guess it is still not synced, so if you just confirm password, you will get into a new uh, interface. Okay, after clicking the button create user and doing everything, here you can see we have two users, user number 1. Okay, so this is how you can create an IAM user through the AWS console. Let's create an IAM user using AWS CLI. So in order to do that, we first need to have the AWS CLI in our system. We have to install it. And it is pretty easy. Just go to your browser and type AWS CLI, install or download, whatever you like. I am in Windows. Let's see. And here you have the documentation installing or updating the latest version of CLI. Let's go here, scroll down, and you have options for Linux. You have option for Mac and also Windows. We are dealing in Windows. If you are in Mac OS, you can check the Mac OS part as well. Okay, so in Windows it is basically two commands. Okay, this one, and after that in the terminal you can paste this. Okay, after you have done these commands, check AWS version if it is already existing in your terminal. It is as simple as that. So let me open my VS Code and let's open the terminal. Okay, let it load. Okay, so let's check if we have AWS account or not, a CLI installed or not. Let's see, and here you go. We have our AWS CLI setup in our Windows system. Clear? Okay. Now, how do we create AWS account with this CLI? First of all, we need to uh, we need to configure the AWS CLI itself. Okay. First of all, we need to uh, configure that. So the command for that is AWS configure. AWS configure, and after that you have to uh, type in your access key and the security key. What is the access key and security key? Well, CLI, you download it in your terminal, right? And there are, every computer, every PC has terminals. Okay, but how to connect that CLI with a AWS user? Okay, CLI and an IAM user, let's say, or any user. You connect them with access key and secret key. These two things. Clear? Okay. So in order to create an IAM user, we need two things. First of all, in order to create an IAM user through the CLI, we first of all have to connect the CLI with the IAM user and through access key and security key. Clear? Okay, fine. So we already have an access key and secret key for a user, and we have downloaded it. Okay, you can do it too if you go to a definite user, let's say this one, and here you see create access key. Click on this, select CLI. Since we are connecting with CLI, go to check this one and go to next. After that, give a description, let's say practicing IAM. Okay, practicing IAM, and create access key. After that, this is the access key, as you can see here, and there's a secret key. So we have our access key and secret key both created, and if you wish, you can download the CSV, and it will only be able you'll be able to access this CSV file only one time. If you refresh it or close the tab, you won't get it. You will again have to create an access key newly. Okay, and for the secret key, I guess you have to create a new user. Okay, similarly, if you see this, you have only one chance to see the secret key. After that, if you hide it, it will be gone. Okay, for the first time. Okay, after that, if you refresh it or if you refresh it or close the tab, it is gone. So it is better to be uh, download this one as CSV file. Okay, so let's get back to our terminal here, and we need an access key. We already have an access key for an IAM user that we are going to use. Let's copy this and paste it over here. So let's enter. We have the access key. Let's copy the access key, the secret key, and again let's paste it. Again press enter. The region name here, in this case the region was for me AP South 1. uh, Go to your AWS main account, see the user details, and figure out where the region is. Okay, you have to put the right region, otherwise you won't be able to connect. Okay, clear? Okay, so let's get back. So we have the default region name. Let's press enter. You can have the output format as YAML, JSON, whatever you like. Again press enter, and I am logged in. Now I am connected with my AWS IAM user through my terminal. Clear? Okay. Now we can create an IAM user, and it is very easy. Just clear it out. Okay, fine. Let me close a tab. Yeah. So the command is very simple. AWS IAM. I'm going to show you the documentation of the AWS CLI commands. So for IAM, it is basically IAM, AWS IAM create user. Okay, let me just show you the documentation first. If you want, just go to the browser and type AWS IAM, and you will be directed to this. And here on the right part, you can see AWS CLI commands for IAM. Click on this, and here you have all the commands related to IAM in CLI. So we are interested in this one. Where is it? Create user. Let's see. Create user. Click on it, and here you go. All the documentation, whatever you can do in it, all are present here. Okay, fine. If you want to have a broader reading of it, you can do it. So let's create our first AWS IAM account using the CLI. So one of the parameters are create user. So create create user, and just give it a name. Let's say user 2. Clear? You see the syntax? First of all, the AWS name, then the resource you want to edit, create, delete, attach policy, whatever. Here it is IAM, it can be EC2, S3, etc. After that, you mention the action. It can be create user, it can be delete, it can be attaching policies, etc. Here we are only interested in creating the user. Then mention the user name and press enter. It should work. Let's wait a bit. And we have created an IAM user. Let's refresh this. Sorry, my bad. Here another argument needs to be passed, that is username. My mistake here. Username, then you give the user name. Let's again enter it, and I should have a new AWS account created, and it is. See this? User ID and username of user 2. Previously I didn't give this parameter, that is username. You see the difference? Create user, and after that I just mentioned the username, but there is a parameter here, that is username. And it is also giving me the syntax of AWS CLI, that is AWS command, that's then sub command, and after that you have parameters. Clear? Okay, fine. Let's see if we actually created the account. Let us refresh this, and we should see a new user account called user2, and here you have it. And in details, as you can see, there's no policy attached, no resources to display, and everything related to this new user account. So this is how you can create an AWS IAM account through the AWS CLI. So what's the process in summary? The process is you first select an AWS user, IAM or anyone, get its access key and secret key through which connect with the CLI. The AWS CLI. Before that, you need to install it. And after connecting with AWS CLI, you just give the command AWS IAM, create user, and the parameter, the username, and you're good to go. This is so simple as it looks here. Okay, so this is how you create an AWS IAM user through AWS CLI. Let's create an AWS account, IAM account or user through Terraform. Now, first of all, what is Terraform? Terraform, this one, is basically a tool to write infrastructure code. It is a infrastructure structure as code tool, meaning you write code and the infrastructure, it can be in cloud AWS or Azure or in GCP, get created, okay, through code. This is the basic definition. Why, if you ask? The answer is, if you want to create a resource or a service in AWS, if you want to use the CLI, there's a command called AWS. After that, you mention the other arguments and parameters. If you're using Azure, you have to mention Azure in CLI. Download the CLI first. After that, you have to put in Azure name in front. Same goes for GCP. After that, you put the arguments and the parameters and create the resources in the specific clouds through the CLI. So, in order to create a resource, we first need to install the CLI of that specific cloud, right? This is where Terraform comes in. It is a common language, let's say a common coding language, okay? Common coding language through which you can create all of these three and many other, okay? All of them will have the same coding structure, okay, and through which you can create a AWS, Azure, GCP, etc. resources. Okay, so let's see how can we do that. Before that, a bit of basics is needed. In Terraform, it is a special kind of language called HCL, if I'm not wrong. Let's browse it. Terraform HCL language. It is not Python, it is not C++ or anything. It is called HashiCorp configuration language, that is HCL. Okay, so Terraform, here you can also see Terraform is an infrastructure as code software tool created by HashiCorp. This means you write code and execute it, and resources get created in your local machine or AWS, GCP, and any other cloud as well. You are basically creating this infrastructure, that is, it can be compute engine, it can be storage systems, it can be networking systems, resources, services, etc., all through a common platform, a coding common platform. Okay, so we know that in Terraform we use HCL, that is HashiCorp configuration language. Now here you have two main things, it's a must. First of all is a provider. This is a code block we need to write. Secondly is the resource. The resource that you are going to create. In AWS, it can be EC2, it can be S3, etc. You have to mention it. The provider is the cloud provider. It can be AWS, it can be Azure, etc. You have to mention that in the provider block. And the resource block, you mention the service. Let's say for AWS, it can be as EC2 or S3, etc. These two are needed. After which you need three commands. That is Terraform init, Terraform plan, and Terraform apply. Okay. The init command initializes Terraform and downloads or configures the necessary plugins to run the Terraform commands at first. The plan command just gives you the planning. I will show you that the planning, the resource and the steps the Terraform will use to create the resource, and apply is basically actually going to create it. Okay. So these are the three steps in order to run a Terraform command. And before that, if you are using an AWS CLI or Azure, you have to log into your terminal. If you don't log into your terminal, you have to mention the access key and the secret key so that Terraform knows to which account your resources are going to be attached. Clear? So another steps come in connecting with cloud. So for our case, we are going to be using or creating AWS IAM. So what we have to do? We have to go to VS Code and run and create a coding file. All of the files in TF has to have a .tf at the end or extension. Okay. In that, we have to have a provider block and a resource block. Provider means any AWS provider, any cloud provider, AWS, Azure, GCP, etc. And the resource means the resource of that cloud I want to create. After writing the code, you give three commands init, initializing the whole Terraform files, planning, it will give you and show you all the plan and steps to executing it, whether anything is wrong or anything changed, and apply is actually going to create it. And before doing that, we need to connect with our cloud or specifically mention it in the file at first. So let's go to the hands-on. Let's go to our VS Code. As you can see, I have already have the VS Code open. Let's create the terminal first. Okay. Let's go and create a file called main.tf. As I previously mentioned, you have to have a .tf extension at the end. Okay. After that, if you have Terraform extension downloaded in your system, in your VS Code, it will be really helpful. You can go to the extensions, just search Terraform, and it will show you some very important extensions. You can download or enable any of them. I have already enabled. So it will give you suggestions while writing the code. Okay. So as I have discussed, first you need to mention the provider like this. See the benefit of using the extension, it automatically suggesting us. So our provider is AWS. So AWS, and below that there can be many options, many parameters, but here first of all let's mention the region. Let's say it is app south 2. Okay, in which region you want to make the resource, but I should prefer using the same region of my user, IAM user at first. Let's see the region. Let's confirm it. I'm going to be using this account, this user. So let's align with this account or user. Let's see. It is in, I'm going to use app south 1. Okay. So let's create it in app south 1. Okay. Fine. This is our provider block. Then go to resource block. Here we should mention, okay, again let's type it. After that you have to mention the type of the user of the resource, IAM user. Then the name, let's say the name is user 3. After that there comes the second bracket. Here you need to mention the name of the actual user. Remember, in resource, this part is the name of the resource itself. So don't confuse these two things. This part is the name of the resource, not the actual IAM name. This is the IAM name, okay? You're specifying the name in the parameter in the second bracket or the curly braces. The first one that you see here is basically the Terraform resource through which you can name it, okay? And the name parameter that you can see here is the actual name that you will be seeing in your IAM user. Okay, fine. Okay, now we have our AWS IAM user resources done, we have provider done, but let's check the actual documentation of it. Let's see. For this we just need to search Terraform AWS IAM. Let's go to the result and select this, and we will have all the documentation related to creating AWS IAM through Terraform. Okay, let it load, and here you are. The resource, as you can see, this is a data resource type. I'm using AWS and I am creating IAM and I am creating an IAM user. This part is related to Terraform, not our resource in AWS. Okay, Terraform will recognize this resource block here through the name LB. This is what LB here means, and in actual AWS console we will see a username created load balancer. Clear? Okay, so these two are different things. So we have created this part, and yeah, so let's see. Let's go to our VS Code again. It is all in red. I guess I haven't yet connected our AWS. So let's configure that. Configure. Okay, we need AWS account, access key. I have it here. Okay, then the resource secret key. We need the access key and the secret key to connect the CLI with our user. Again, enter. The region is the same, and yeah, now we are connected with the AWS CLI and the IAM user in our console. So let's see. So we are connected. Now let's see whether Terraform is present in our system. Let's type Terraform version. Yes, we have Terraform. We have Terraform. If you don't have Terraform, just go to your web, search Terraform install, and you will have all the directions. Let's see. Install. Go to their official documentation, and you will find all the steps required. You can download it from here, download button, and execute the executive file, and you will be good to go. It is as simple as that. I already have it in my system, as you can see. Now there are a few other side commands. Let's say show. This shows what resources you have already in your system. So it is saying no state, meaning that there's no resources created. Okay. Another one is Terraform validate. It will see my actual all the Terraform files having the .tf extensions and see whether there are any mistakes or not. Let's see. I think we do have mistake. Let's see if it can find out. Okay, let me save it first. Let's save it and now run. Yeah, it is picking up mistake. What did it pick? Let's see. It is saying that, let's see here. Okay, it's a huge. Okay, here. Okay, so first mistake is that we missed a colon here. Sorry, the apostrophes. Let's put it here and let's again run it. Here you go. Done. And yeah, see, all the red marks are gone. So we missed a apostrophe here and it showed us that it is invalid. So again, let's see the Terraform validate whether our script is okay or not. Let's clear it. So let us run Terraform init. So actually initializing all the requirements here, the provider plugins, etc. Here you can see it is initializing provider plugins. The plugins required to actually make the resources in AWS. Okay, so it is installing that. Let's give it a bit of time. Okay, after that we'll again validate. So after we have ran the Terraform init command, let's expand it. Here you can see we have initialized the plugin, the provider plugin, that is AWS, and here you can see the version here, installed HashiCorp AWS version. Okay, if we don't do Terraform init, it won't have the necessary files and you'll have the error that I previously showed you. Okay, so after having the Terraform init, let's give our second command, that is Terraform plan, and press enter and wait. It takes a bit of time, but let's see. After the Terraform plan command, as you can see, everything is here, all the steps are here, everything is planned. As you can see, want to add, it is already suggesting us that there's one thing to add, and we have the final command, that is Terraform apply, and we will have our resource. Let's press enter and let's wait. Okay, so there's a confirmation message that enter yes. Let's press enter and let's see. Creating user 3 and apply complete, one resource added, as you can see. And now if you do Terraform resource, Terraform show, it should show our resource created. Let's see. And also let's go to our AWS account and see whether a new user is actually created. And here you go. A new user, that is user 3, is already created, and we have created it through our Terraform. Okay, it is all still loading. It takes a bit time, but yeah, as you can see in the AWS console, we already have our user 3 created. So like this, guys, you can easily create Terraform, create AWS resource or any other cloud resource through Terraform. Okay, and in this session or in this video, I have described how you can create an AWS IAM through through Terraform. Okay, Terraform is a huge thing, many things to learn. Here I have only discussed or showed you how to create IAM. Create IAM using Terraform. Okay, you can also attach policies. Okay, you can attach policies, and you can do many editing through Terraform. This is why it is so popular, especially in automating. You can create resources only through code. Okay, this is why we need Terraform. So yeah, let's see again. As you can see, Terraform show is showing us that we have an resource created, AWS IAM user, user 3, all the details about it here. And also in the console, we can see we actually have a user named user 3 created. So yeah, this is, you can create AWS IAM account through Terraform, and that's it. Bye bye.